Good evening, everyone. My name is Petra Kalev. I was quite surprised and overwhelmed when I was asked by the Australian Poetry Centre to direct the winners of the competition for the poetic monologues. So it's a great pleasure to be here tonight to introduce those monologues. When the opportunity came up, I just jumped at it, and I have had a wonderful time being able to direct these dense and vivid pieces of work. So without further ado, the first piece I'd like to introduce is Before the Fall, which is James Laidler's poetic monologue, which is adapted from his verse novel Taste of Apple. It was the winner of the IP Awards for Best First Book in 2010, and today it will be read by NIDA graduate Aljana Bella, who has just returned from South Korea, where he was touring Black Swan and Belvoir Street's theatre company production of The Sapphires. Thank you.
The 3-inch plaster crack first started to appear in the lounge room when I was 12. For the next 3 years I watched it grow, shedding its chalky skin like an old man with dandruff. Bloody trains, Dad steams and puffs, the house shuddering during breakfast. My 17-year-old sister Delise and me sit opposite Dad at the dining table, careful not to laugh. Dad brushes the white plaster powder like so many pesky flies off his navy suit, but it's a losing battle. A few uninvited specks always fall on his carefully combed hair, his porridge, his toast, his tie, or the packet of Peter Stuyvesants by his side. Our mum, Emir, sits statue quiet and watches her husband from a stool in the kitchen. Her long black Filipino hair draped over her shoulder like a heavy curtain blocking out the light. Once I asked Mum why she didn't make Dad's breakfast, or lunch for that matter. She just stared at me for a long moment and said, "John doesn't like it." The timetable never changes after breakfast in our house. Delise and me call it Dad's peak hour rush. After stoking his boiler with porridge, Dad pulls into the kitchen and we watch as he prepares his lunch for work and loads it into his briefcase. Mum reckons the routine has to do with the fact he's a droughtsman. He does things the best way, she'd always say. A thermos of black coffee, check. 2 sandwiches, margarine thin, pickles thick, ham folded and cut into triangles, check. 1 large red apple, quartered, decored and glad wrapped, check. 2 Scotch finger biscuits, check. 1 calculator, check. Pens, pencils and rolled up plans, check. Dad snaps the briefcase lock shut, glances at his wristwatch and thunders out of the kitchen in a straight line towards the door. At the last moment he turns and calls out, "I'll be home late. Don't wait up." The front door slides shut, the kitchen kettle boils, and my mother rises from her stool with a vaporous look of relief on her face. "Come on, Pedro," Delise. "Quick now, you get ready for school." Outside, a passing train shakes the poor foundations of our little rented weatherboard house near Heidelberg Station, near the Hurstbridge line, and my sister and me get up slowly from our seats, ready for a new day. Enrique Rodriguez. "Yep, here. Lucy Jackson. Yes, miss. VJ Dahoni. Yo. Marco Lombardi. What? Andreas Lakovic. Not here, probably wagging, miss." The classroom sniggers. "Nima Lomac. Lomac." The replacement teacher peers like a prison warden over the wall of paper on a desk. "Lomac?" I bump the dark shape of a girl slumped over the desk beside me. "She's here," I say. And Pedro I'm not sure how to say this. It's on Paco, but that's my mum's surname. They were meant to change it last month. It's Jones. Pedro Aidan Jones, I say, tugging at the collar that has become a hangman's noose around my neck. Marco Lombardi chuckles, swings around and looks me up and down. He winks at Lucy Jackson, then pulls tight the corners of his eyes, forming slits. "Ong, dong, tong, fong," he spits. Lucy smiles. Soon after Dad leaves for work, Mum pushes us out the door with kisses and cuddles. The front door closes dungeon tight, and walking to school I picture Mum monsoon dreaming, wiping benches, dusting photos, cleaning basins, cooking curry, then dusting over and over again, just the way Dad likes it. Delise and me walk down Bell Street, now humming with buses, motorbikes and cars. Before too long, we pass the old Olympic rings strung out on rusted wire between the Alamein Street shops. The idea of attending Heidelberg West High School, nestled in the heart of Melbourne's 1956 Olympic Village, was Dad's, of course. He insisted that me and my sister walk the 20 minutes to school every day because, unlike the mostly white and pricier Heidelberg College, located 3 blocks down the road, at Westie, we were more likely to blend in. Out at Westie, our Filipino black hair and tanned skin wouldn't matter. In history class, Mr. Swaggart teaches us how, under those rings, the Prime Minister, Sir Robert Menzies, in January 1956 cut ribbon and raised champagne. Swaggart tells us while bouncing and prancing about in his neatly ironed shirt that the village was built to house visiting athletes from all over the world. Swaggart says, "We should feel privileged." He says our school gymnasium, which now smells nowadays like rotting fish, once trained the world's best, and that down Bell Street the Olympic torch had passed with great fanfare. After the games were over, the Olympic Village was converted into public housing, but Swaggart never talks about that. And the fact that West Heidelberg is one of the poorest postcodes and highest crime rates in the whole of Victoria doesn't get a mention either. I stop after school at the Alamein Street shops and gaze up at the perfectly proportioned Olympic rings that Swaggart says symbolise peace and unity. What a fuckwit. 5 rings, 1 for Mr. Swaggart, 1 for me, and 1 each for Delise, Mum and Dad. 5 misfits jumping through hoops. I walk home, fists clenched, carrying a flame. "You're dead!" Chris Reed jabs the barrel of his plastic M16 hard into my ribcage and raises his voice in victory. A rattling train thunders overhead like artillery fire. "Jono! Blake! Hey, over here! The last one's over here!" 2 boys, slightly shorter than Chris, materialise like ghosts from behind a picket fence and glide shadow-silent into formation beside their fearless leader. I crouch, head bent. Inside my dugout of rubbish bins, cardboard boxes and milk crates, a defeated soldier. My rifle, an old eucalypt branch, wilts in my fingertips. Falling to the ground is Amy Reed, my 8-year-old teammate, trundles over from the curbside, a guilty look on her face. Chris taps his wristwatch. 2 minutes, stick boy. Get going, he barks. I stare back and forth at Amy, the turncoat, and Chris, the enemy. Over and over and over again, muscles tightening. My pulse throbs like a burst of bullets in my ears until suddenly I pull the pin and words explode from my mouth. "Stop cheating, you prick!" And that's how I got this scar. The one high above my right eye. Chris Reed, his henchman, a smashed toy gun and a battle by the tracks. The Silvertop taxi pulls into the Austin Hospital car park and Mum and me climb into the back. Waiting in the front seat, Dad takes his eyes off the ticking meter and glances back at the 7 stitches laid out above my swollen and bruised right eye. "Kramer Street," he says to the taxi driver, returning his gaze to the meter. As we drive down Bell Street, Dad mutters something, a question. His words thread their way through the wounded and silent spaces of the taxi, tying up my thoughts. I press my head against the cool glass of the passenger window and stare out into the darkness. 7 stitches, 7 words. So what happened to the other kid?